diversity is so beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But then it's also so complex. Not complicated, but complex in the sense that you have to hear each and every role player in the system, which is what a system is. It has different role players at different levels, and all of those need to be heard. So I can't tell you the magic answer as to how we are able to do it, but I think that again, it goes back to what I define a biosphere as a facilitator. The fact that you step in there not to, show power over anyone, but when they say you bring people to the table, I think the biosphere is the table.
The regenerative way begins where the pavement ends. I'm Ryan Snosky, bringing forward conversations with researchers, conservationists, educators, guides, and knowledge keepers from around the world to help us reconnect with land. These are stories born in the field, raw, unpolished, and shaped by the landscapes that hold them. Together we explore what it means to come back into relationship with land, with food, with wild places that shape who we are. The following conversation is with Shoki Mafogo, the program manager at Kruger Canyons Biosphere for the Pro-Nature Livelihoods program. And this conversation was such an amazing experience for me to learn more about the incredible work that Kruger Canyons Biosphere is doing in a very complex region, and the work that Shoki is personally involved in, and then the biosphere at large, is just nothing short of remarkable. Really engaging with the complex social and environmental problems that the region faces, but doing so through a bottoms-up approach and really working with community, with diverse stakeholders and considerations to help ensure that there's a holistic and long-term solution to many of the complex problems that the area faces. And this conversation really builds off of the previous recording with Lutendo Magwedi, the chair of the Vembe Biosphere Reserve, because the two biospheres, Kruger Canyon Biosphere and Vembe Biosphere, collaborate quite intimately and work together, because in so many ways we need to challenge this perspective that protected areas are siloed or designated to a specific area. We need a systems approach, and we need people to collaborate with one another to ensure that the entirety and totality of these systems are protected and enhanced, and that's exactly what Kruger Canyon and Vembe Biosphere Reserve are doing. They're working together to solve, complex, difficult problems, but doing so at a systems perspective. And Shoki's insights on this podcast were just amazing. She outlines some of the powerful work that Kruger Canyon Biosphere is engaged in, and really just inspiring conversation. I so enjoyed recording this with her, just on top of Blyde Canyon, the third largest canyon in the world. And this podcast was recorded in partnership with TransX, which is the Transdisciplinary Education Collaboration for Transformations in Sustainability, and it's hosted by the University of Saskatchewan. It's a transdisciplinary research training program and partnership that reconfigures sustainability science education all around the world, and it is supported in part by funding from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. And I can personally attest to just how amazing of an organization it is. They're doing amazing work, really equipping practitioners and researchers from all over the world with the necessary skills and tools for us to collectively solve important social and environmental problems. And they're doing that through a very powerful international community and network, and just reimagining what sustainability education can look like all around the world. And so I definitely wouldn't have been able to sit down with Shoki if it wasn't for TransX. I'm so grateful for the incredible organization that they are and the amazing work that they do. And I so enjoyed recording this episode with Shoki, and I hope you do as well. Shoki.
Hi, Ryan.
Thank you so much for bringing me here. You know, when we were talking about sitting down and having this conversation, I didn't even know what to picture. And to be here with you, with Kruger to Canyon Biosphere and Blyde Canyon really does feel surreal. So thank you so, so much.
You are so welcome. I'm so glad we managed to blow you away and that we didn't oversell and underdeliver.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Do you mind just quickly speaking to where are we right now and what does this place mean to you?
Okay, so we are in the Kruger to Canyons Biosphere landscape. Actually, the exact spot where we are is just at the Blyde Canyon, which is the third largest canyon in the world. And in terms of topography, this is actually where the high felt transitions to becoming the low felt. So really a very historical place with, you know, a lot of culture, a lot of history, a lot of conservation efforts that are happening in this space, and a lot of sustainability or sustainable livelihoods from, you know, communities that are adjacent to this area. So we call these communities in this space, we call them strategic water source areas, because what we do with our water here impacts the downstream users, like people, you know, in the Kruger, in Mozambique, who depend on the very water that we're using. So basically where we are in the heart of the Lowveld. And yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That it's very clear when you articulate where we are. There's so much meaning to this place
Yes.
for you, which I think really speaks to the work that you do and who you are and the community that you come from. Do you want to just share a little bit about your story? Where are you from, and why does this place mean so much to you?
Okay. So just going back again to my name. So my name is Rešoketšwe, but you can call me Shoki. My mom calls me Rešoketšwe. I come from Raskororo, which is just also in the Kruger to Canyons landscape. But I was born and bred there. Work at the Kruger to Canyons Biosphere as a program manager now. The program that I am responsible for is called the Nature Positive Livelihoods and Demonstration Program. And I like to think we have the most diverse projects in the entire Kruger to Canyons because we work, you know, with from enterprise development all the way to climate adaptation in the form of ecosystem-based adaptation. So very, very broad scope of work and very exciting as well because we also interact with communities. You know, communities are at the center of the work that we do from project design all the way to implementation. We cannot do it without our communities. So I've been with the K2C this is my 12th year. Yeah, very long time. But I just grew in the organization. It was very different from what I studied at school because I studied governance, and having to come in the space of conservation at the time, I felt like governance does not fit in this at all. But as I grew in the sector, I actually realized that governance is at the very heart of sustainability. You cannot talk sustainability without good governance. So honestly, really feels like a very perfect fit for me as an individual. A lot of the work that we do in sustainable development really resonates with my own personal values. And that's why I think I've been in this space for so long, because it's such an alignment to where I see myself growing as a young Black woman in South Africa. So yeah, basically that's my journey.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's no surprise that governance ties into the work that you do and the perspectives that you hold, because through the conversations we've had, there's been a overarching social component. And when we talk about ecological systems, you tie in people, people that rely and interact with the ecological systems. Many people don't actually know what a biosphere is. So maybe we could just quickly cover Kruger to Canyon Biosphere, the role that it plays in, you know, supporting ecological systems, but also supporting governance and the social component. Do you mind just speaking to Kruger to Canyon?
I think I can speak a little bit to that. Hopefully I do it justice to all the seniors who know better. But yeah, so for us, the Kruger to Canyons, firstly, we all know biospheres are a UNESCO designated site, right? Which is also what we are declared by UNESCO. But also in terms of the K2C landscape, our name is a description of our actual landscape or footprint, because we range in between the Kruger National Park and the Blyde Canyons, hence Kruger to Canyons. So it's just a description of where the footprint is. So, the mountains, the water, the communities along the escarpment. But in terms of what we do, I like to see biospheres as facilitators, because we don't really work alone, and when you facilitate, you can't facilitate processes by yourself. You need to include government, you need to include communities, you need to include private sectors. And I don't think there's anyone else who's well positioned than a biosphere to facilitate that platform, whether it's in, whatever the development, conservation, sustainability, all those projects. I think at the center of it, when you have a biosphere that is the platform, it becomes a nice catalyst to that change, because it's a safe space for government, it's a safe space for community, it's a safe space for private sectors. And tell me who else has that kind of platform without exerting a certain power over.
Yeah.
But like, with biospheres, it sort of creates a safe space for stakeholders. I'd like to think it's a place where we can reconcile people with nature. And we do that through sustainable development, through projects that have impact on grassroots levels, but still feed into the greater scheme of things, like still achieves. The K2C, we like to say there's an implicative order of the Greater Kruger Strategic Development Plan, which influences, our priorities, but also feeding into our National Development Plan, feeding into sustainable development goals. But like, how do we break all of that down that it makes sense to the layman on the ground? So that's the process in which I think biospheres are so privileged to be able to hold the space to facilitate, because really without biospheres playing that space, I do find that then there's a vacuum.
Yeah.
A
vacuum, and it's a space that you're speaking to a bottom-up approach, but through the bottom-up approach, there's such a diversity of perspective, consideration. Yes. There's so much that goes into that. From my understanding, in Kruger to Canyon, it's 1.5 million people, which you can imagine, or I can imagine, is a rich environment where there's agricultural consideration, there's conservation consideration, there's community consideration, yes. Water. How does Kruger to Canyon biosphere, or yourself even as a practitioner within that space, how do you navigate such a range of perspective and consideration?
I think a lot of our strategic priorities as an organization sort of direct us that we are able to accommodate or influence or be present in those different dynamics. Quite diverse, as you have rightfully described. But diversity is so beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But then it's also so complex. Not complicated, but complex, in the sense that you have to hear each and every role player in the system, which is what a system is. It has different role players at different levels, and all of those need to be heard. So I can't tell you the magic answer as to how we are able to do it, but I think that, again, it goes back to what I define a biosphere as a facilitator. The fact that you step in there not to, show power over anyone, but when they say you bring people to the table, I think the biosphere is the table.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we are the table, and people come around in their different forms, different sectors, backgrounds, knowledge. And it all comes together that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to build off that and just give an example of a project that's being worked on in the biosphere
Yeah.
and how it is working as that facilitator?
Yeah, I mean, we've just been to a community with you now, which you saw, Peering Community, which is our demonstration site as a biosphere. That is where we are able to demonstrate how communities can build their resilience to the impacts of climate change. So how do you, usually when you hear climate change, I don't know, back then it used to be like a concept that some scientists just came about. You just think white gowns, labs, climate change, But how do you break it down to make sense to the most layperson on the ground? Livestock owners. We work very closely with livestock farmers. What does climate change mean to them? It means that rangelands no longer can carry the capacity to feed their livestock. And what happens, it's a value chain. When that happens, they cannot sell their cattle at the right price that can then create income for themselves and carry their communities. Livestock is not just a means of income that they get to sell, but it's also a cultural thing that, as Africans, Black Africans, cattle are part of our heritage. We inherit cattle from our grandparents, great-grandparents, and then we also leave them for the next generation. So what happens when our rangelands die out? Then that carry on of culture and heritage also dies out, because then you don't have anything to pass on to the next generation. So then how do you get livestock farmers to get involved? You get them involved in sustaining their own rangelands, that they are able to then preserve the heritage and the livelihoods that they get and benefit from their cattle. So we work also closely with crop farmers. We work very closely with traditional authorities, who in South Africa, they are the custodians of communal land. So we work with them all the way from project inception, project design. We do a lot of visioning processes with them, so that the project speaks to the community's needs. We don't just come in there with our vision and want people to get on board. No, we have to build it together with the community to see where do they see themselves and how does our project fit into their vision. Yeah, and that way we also cultivate a sense of ownership from community members as part of the project, and that's what breeds sustainability, because as you know, a lot of our projects are funded, usually short term, like 3 years at most would be a funding cycle for a project. So what happens after the 3 years? We don't expect the work to stop, but we expect communities to carry on with that work. And for that to happen, they must have buy-in from the get-go, and they then continue with, we have now in Peering livestock farmers who are resting their grazing areas, who are practicing proper rangeland management principles without the project being there to show them this is how you do it. It's we worked the journey with them. Now they are working the journey by themselves, because they've seen the benefit. It has demonstrated they've seen the value of it, and we could not have done that without having involved people from the get-go.
I think when you say they see the value of it, that's such an important piece. Because through this bottom-up approach and this collaboration and this open dialogue and this interaction of social ecological systems and a perspective of multi-generational consideration, and even moving past the 3-year mark and then moving into the 5 and the 10, you can see that there's longevity there.
Yes. Now in the community we're in, how many years? It's now 2026. It's now on 7 years.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's there's no funding we've had for 7 years, but yet the work still continues. Say you talk about social and ecological integrity. We just witnessed this morning some savings groups or community village level banks, which is a concept that we have used to leverage adaptation but with savings groups at the center of that, because people want things that are valuable to them. They want to have access to money, that they did not have before. So how do we tie this big community need with a project objective?
Yeah.
And that's really where the two married one another, and now we have successful integration or interweaving, as my line manager likes to say, that now we have eco savings groups where people get economic value from this methodology that we have practiced, but they still end up being more adaptive to the impacts of climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you want to just outline that project a little bit of what is the vision for that project? What's the impact that's coming out of it? And where did the support initially come from? Where did that funding come from?
So that was quite some years back, and the funding for that came from the government of Flanders. They really, really helped us be innovative there. So, and as part of the components of this process, we had agroecology as a component, rangeland management as a component. But at the center of all of that was the framework used was a conservation agreement. And a conservation agreement is a negotiated exchange of benefits that we would have with community members. So in order for them to do a conservation action, what is the benefit that they get? And that was really the framework in which we were using to set up these savings groups. So a savings group then became a tool that people could unlock to get. It was a financial instrument that you can have access to that is directly linked to adaptation, which is very innovative. Nowhere else have we ever seen that, where a livestock farmer or a crop farmer can have access to a loan to buy inputs that make them more resilient to the impact of climate change. And without high interest, very communally governed, because they govern the savings groups themselves. And once paid off, the loan becomes a revolving loan that is accessible for another farmer to have access to. I mean,
it's powerful.
It's magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where else, typically, a farmer, a small-scale farmer, like the kind of farmers we have in our communities, in order to have access to loans such as those from financial institutions, formal financial institutions, there's so much red tape that they would not qualify for that.
Yeah.
And so now we have farmers that are using drip irrigation instead of flood irrigation. Farmers that are practicing mulching in their in their farmlands, not using pesticides. Those are agroecology principles that is not just good for the kind of produce they get, but also good for the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How the education and behavioral change piece around that, I think is really important, because all around the world, there's systems in place that need to be challenged. And, through a Canadian perspective, monocrop agriculture and pesticides is a massive, massive problem. How does the biosphere facilitate education and behavioral change?
So another magic trick that we have been able to get right as a biosphere is that for all our projects, the beneficiaries or people employed on the projects come from the communities in which we work. That way the monitoring is easier to do, because it becomes constant, because the people are there in those communities. It's not me that has to drive all the way to this community to go and monitor this one farmer. So the monitoring becomes continuous, because we've got field workers whom we call ecosystem custodians, who are based in those communities. They have relationships with those farmers. It's easy for them to track the impact in the monitoring. And we have data that speaks to the kind of change that we talk about. We don't just thumb suck it, but it's like years and years of data of tracking from when the information was received and the practice changed, the behavior changed, and comparing it to the baseline at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's powerful because it's data, but it's community perspective,
Yes.
supporting that data and that understanding and seeing the benefits. It's
Yeah.
not this abstract piece.
Yeah.
It's
And
tangible.
it's tangible. And also what happens as at the backdrop is that is also capacity building for the actual field worker that's doing the data capturing and the monitoring, because then they are now more capacitated. So they are now more skilled because they're now putting in practice all those processes. So then you end up having a community that keeps winning on different levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you think about a community that keeps winning, I love that framing because I think
the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. The gift that keeps giving, and like it's humanizing these systems.
Yeah.
Do you have any, anecdotal stories that you can draw from potentially a farmer before the project took place, and just some of that testimony of, seeing the impact and then that path forward, that vision for it?
Yes, I will talk about this group of 4 farmers that had access through the savings groups to buy a tractor.
Okay.
So a tractor is an asset, right? And these specific farmers are much elderly. 2 of them are women. So elderly women in their 70s got funding to buy themselves a tractor. Now, there's no bank in the world that would give a rural-based granny a loan to buy such a big asset. But now these old ladies in their 70s own this asset. It's theirs. And they can improve their livelihoods with it. And they can also pass it on to the next generation as an asset. These are grannies that have never sat in a classroom, that have never made a bank application for a loan. But now, through this process, it's I can't, like, even just explaining it to you, I don't even think you understand the magnitude. The grandchildren of that granny are going to grow up knowing that it's normal for a grandmother to own an asset. Like their world, that's the normal reality. That's the new standard. And so it was just about access for the granny to get that asset, which also contributes to her own agricultural and agroecology commitments. But it's also, I don't like using the word upliftment, but it's also like a whole new order for the entire family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A whole new order for the entire family, multi-generational.
Multi-generational, yeah, exactly.
I think it ties to the conversation we were having with your son.
Yeah.
The example that you're setting in the walk of life of caring about these, systems and building.
And in his world, it's normal.
Yeah.
So that is, especially in South Africa, we have a painful history as South Africa, as you would know. So that is such a game changer. I don't think that the amounts of reports we could have written we could have really captured what that meant.
Yeah.
Like you used a nice word of generational wealth. We talk of generational wealth. And someday great-grandson of that granny can leverage that same tractor to unlock a whole bigger, part of his life.
Yeah.
And it happened through this project, through a savings group.
Yeah.
Where people self-selected one another, contributed money together with a common objective of being more sustainable in their ways of farming.
Yeah. I think it's so powerful because it's so simple in some ways when you think about it's a tractor.
Yeah.
But when we are bringing that forward into a conversation of multi-generational impact, you can see that there's a tangible trajectory that's changed by these decisions.
Absolutely. Also, in terms of culture, I work a lot in the gender mainstreaming part of the work, the gender focal person at work. So even with a gender lens, it's still groundbreaking because culturally, women are sidelined. One of the biggest barriers in gender development it's culture, because culture sees women as less than, Sometimes not maybe less than, but they will not be the top of the food chain. So in no world culturally would a woman ever own such an asset. So it's really groundbreaking on different levels because the like elderly women, elderly black women, yeah.
It's powerful, and it's amazing to know that the biosphere is a conduit for this change.
And the thing about this, so they are now paying back every month the loan for buying that tractor, and that loan is now available to other farmers to borrow from. And it just keeps, it's a wheel. It just keeps rolling and rolling. And we are no longer managing that as the K2C. It's now managed by the community.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so incredible.
The same criteria we used as a project, we trained the community. Now they are using that criteria. They've even added more steps to the criteria that they are using to administer the loans to the community themselves. We are no longer part of it. They're doing it. And not once have we heard that someone ran away with the loan and did not pay it back. No. No, doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And I think that ties really well into this next question. A lot of international funding support doesn't have a human story attached to it for many. And through our day together, you can see how profound this impact can be, but how necessary it is that governments and populations around the world that have resources and have access in many ways gives back and supports and uplifts. Can you speak to some of that international support and collaboration that you draw from?
So I mean, like we just mentioned now the government of Flanders. We also had some funding from Global Affairs Canada. So I mean, international donors, we have been depending on their funds to do our work. And it's so meaningful. I wish all of them would get a chance to come to the ground to actually see, like the person processing the fund needs to come here and see how much impact and how much added value it is beyond just the reporting of outputs and outcomes and all of that, right? And we are very grateful for the funding, and it's just, I wish that funding mechanisms were just designed in a more sustainable way. Some are very short term, a year, 2 years. As if you can just go in a community and do, it doesn't change. It takes so much time to build trust, right? And by the time you've just earned the trust, the funding has ended. But at the same time, it is because of this very funding that we were able to expand into other communities. And we cannot downplay that at all because, sometimes just sharing success stories is one thing, but now replicating that success, scaling up, that is the real success or the real evidence of success. And we have been able to do that, expand into like more communities, replicate this model of resilience, adaptation. And I don't know what else I could. I don't want to sound like I'm begging.
No,
but,
no, you definitely don't.
By
no means you do.
But it's really, I think that if people responsible for all these funds got an opportunity to come to the ground like you have seen today, they would really see that a dollar really goes a long way. They would see that the funding that we receive really changes lives. And I mean, just the story that I've just told you with the granny, and there are like many more stories. You walked into a meeting today with about 40, 50 people? And all of them represent like 20 other people in their savings groups who have similar stories to share.
I think that's really the hope with the regenerative way, is these stories are deeply human. They're so inspiring. A day like today is just deeply inspiring. And I think you can see that there's such a cascading impact that comes out of the efforts of some of these grants
Yeah.
that exist
Yeah.
that can support change and support resources in environments that are so complex.
Yeah.
Do you want to, because we talked about, human wildlife conflicts.
Yeah.
I think that really embodies complexity, and there's so much there,
Yeah.
and there's so much need for support from around the world. What is it like living adjacent to Kruger, National Park, and how does that impact communities with agriculture and the likes?
I mean, we have a colleague who is like responsible for that component at the K2C, so he would know much better than me because that's his line of work. But I know that human wildlife conflict is a reality on the ground for communities adjacent to the Kruger. I know that beneficiation is a big contentious point where people, I mean, ideally communities should be the first line of defense for protected areas, right? But how does that happen if communities don't see a value of being next to a protected area?
Yeah.
So it's like the whole system of fences. Are they there to keep the animals in or to keep the people out? But I think South Africa has taken some strides in making sure that people and parks, where there's a program called People in Parks, like people are part of what happens in the park, because anyway what happens outside of the park influences what happens inside of the park.
Yeah.
So I can't really speak too much on it because I don't think I know enough on the matter, but I do know that communities cannot be segregated from protected areas.
Yeah. And I think that's an overarching theme in so much that you speak to, is this social integration piece. And even coming, like for myself, coming from Vembe Biosphere, and knowing that Kruger to Canyon works with Vembe because there is no separation. This idea of a fence or an area
or a boundary,
nature, and this is where humans live, it needs to be challenged, and I feel like you are challenging it.
That's why I told you my line manager likes to use the word interweave instead of integrate. Because when you interweave, nothing loses its power or its form or its essence. It just changes shape, but still keeps the same essence. So when you collaborate, we don't integrate systems, because when you integrate, there's always a power dynamic. Like people use that, especially with IKS, Indigenous Knowledge Systems, integrating that into this. And you can't really integrate it because then you're already saying it must fit into this other thing. But when you interweave it, you take it as it is with its true essence, and it's just about changing shape, but no one loses. Yeah, in weaving that basket together.
Nobody loses, and it seems when people talk about traditional knowledge or stewardship, it seems like we're drawing from the weaving of the past. That was always the way. What does sustainability, stewardship, or traditional knowledge mean to you? Because in my world, those three are just integrated.
Oh, you're catching on. I know that. I don't think that we should be separating or teasing out these things from one another, because they are one in the same. And if you're going to talk about sustainability, it's really about interweaving all those systems together. Especially, I mean, we talk about indigenous people, indigenous knowledge. Like I'm still doing things today that my grandmother taught me to do. And it's probably how one day, if I get a daughter, I will teach her to do. Or, all these things, like you cannot divorce yourself from them.
Yeah. There's a legacy.
There's a legacy, even in how we do natural resource management. A lot of it is learned from our forefathers. Cattle, we talked about cattle earlier, about how it's not just a livelihood thing, but it's also a heritage thing, and that's part of IKS.
Yeah.
Because you cannot divorce yourself from any of these systems. So I don't know why people try to have them as different components instead of one basket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a really tough question to ask with being prompted.
Yeah.
But I do think that all around the world, there has been this divorcing from the one basket and this separation that's taken place. Even in my context, in my world, it's here's the city, here's a protected area. That's where the nature is. This is where humans are. What gives you hope for the future for your baby boy and the vision of that interweaving of these worlds back again?
Us, the youth, the young people now in our projects, that's what gives me hope, because we are really at a nice place where we are running with the baton from our parents and grandparents into a new world. And so I get hope with the more I see youth being very active in the space of sustainable development. That gives me hope, because then it just shows that we are still carrying on with the light. It's not being, it's not being lost with others. So seeing young people in this space, that's what gives me hope, because then we are going to grow in this. And as we grow, we are raising children. That's the thing about this sector. You can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You are fully in. Like, you see someone drop a paper and you're so offended that you go and pick it. So you're fully in. And if the youth is fully in, it's really, people like say the youth are the future of tomorrow, whatever, the leaders of the future. We are the leaders of now.
Yeah.
And if the youth stand up, and it's not different from voting, responsible citizenship. Youth don't want to vote. They want to sit back and all of that. But even in the conservation space, if youth sit back and they don't take the future of their natural resources in their own hands, then we would have a problem. But I'm not all gloom and doom. I'm very hopeful, because we have a lot of promising youth in this space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of promising youth.
Yeah.
We talked about Transsex and the Spencer Foundation,
Yeah.
and it's why I'm here. And Transsex and this collaboration of international, communities and researchers and practitioners, and many of them are youth.
Yes.
Many of them are young, and it was so deeply inspiring to see that all around the world there's change. There's this relationship that seems to be being brought forward of a reintegration of traditional knowledge and practice and stewardship.
When I explained that to you, and I talked about how postgrad learners came to meet with indigenous knowledge custodians, you probably thought I meant old people, right? But no, it was the youth. The indigenous knowledge custodians were youth.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really something that was really nice to observe from this process, that for a lot of the times when people talk about indigenous knowledge, we like to sort of project that to the much older generation.
Yeah.
But no, even the youth are very much active in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we have been able to portray or demonstrate in the Spencer Foundation work, where the youth came together, but with different systems of knowledge.
Yeah.
And they came together with no one superior than the other, but all equally valid. And it was just really amazing to see how that coexisting was happening.
Yeah.
Just in conversations.
Can you actually speak to the Spencer Foundation? Because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a project that we are working as the K2C with the University of Witwatersrand, or WITS in South Africa, as it's popularly known, where we are trying to show how biospheres can, or biosphere practitioners can, build its adaptation capacity by using IKS, or indigenous knowledge systems. And we have done it last year and this year. Now in July, shortly, We are going to be doing a second round of it where we bring the two different systems together in the form of youth or scholars or indigenous youth, if we would like to put it like that. And they just talk about adaptation, what it means to them, and their different knowledge that they come with, and just embedding the two into one another, or like just being embedded into that space, listening to the different things that come up. And it's, done in communities where you'll just be, like we are sitting in this beautiful landscape here, but you're in a community where you know that the bedrock of the ways that are done in there is coming from, great, 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 forefathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see that, one, that's incredibly powerful, but two, a project like this, I think for me anyways, is where I draw the inspiration from, is the way forward.
Yeah.
More projects like this must exist.
Exactly. You see why I was hopeful about the youth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding.
So it's about just providing the platform for that to happen.
Just kind of expanding upon that, and then a few additional questions. But what advice would you give to practitioners, researchers, youth of how do we integrate these worlds? It's building upon the Spencer Foundation. What are some of those pieces that you think people should be aware of as they look to, bring knowledge forward from the fathers and ancestors of the past, and these traditional values and perspectives?
I think it's all about accommodation. I mean, it's not about just accommodating the indigenous knowledge systems, but it's that those custodians or holders of IKS also accommodate the other systems. So it's really about accommodating one another. I think. And that's how you can be able to build. You cannot build on a foundation where one's values are compromised.
Yeah.
But when they're accommodated, then people feel like they're part of the conversation and they can be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As they absolutely should be.
Yeah.
A few final wrap-up questions.
Yeah.
One, what are some of the concerns for Kruger to Canyon Biosphere? What would you like people to be aware of? What are some of the areas that you feel like you need support from?
I think the biggest one, like any other donor-dependent or institution, is funding. A big part of our work is dependent on funding or financial support. So I think that sometimes we aren't able to even dream so big because we feel like there's that limitation with funding. But if Biosphere has never had to worry about funding, we would probably run for president even because of all what we have been able to demonstrate to do with little resources but great impact.
Yeah.
So imagine if we never had to worry about the resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like the one big thing, and it's not unique to the K2C. I think it's a model. I mean, it's something that a lot of the South African biospheres also struggle with. And yeah, if there was some center somewhere, in Canada, maybe. Isn't that where Santa Claus is from? Isn't it somewhere from one of the poles?
Yeah, from the Arctic. From the North Pole, as the story goes.
Yeah.
What, growing up, what do you feel like formed your perspectives on stewardship and your connection to the natural world?
Oh, that's easy. 100% my parents. So I come from a family where my dad is a very strong and present person in my life. My mom, very resilient, very strong woman in my life. So they've raised me with that confidence and assurance of knowing that I have a sense of belonging in the community that I come from, with the natural resources that are there, with social structures that are there, I belong. And that has been the greatest radar for me throughout life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a sense of place.
A sense of place.
Yeah.
I've never felt like I don't belong. And that's why I will always do everything that I have to protect our communities, natural resources, because it's where I belong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm working in communities in which I come from. I can't separate myself from the communities. So big ups to my parents for making sure that I have that sense of belonging from when I was a child.
Yeah.
All the way until now.
And what do you think are some of the pieces that go into a sense of belonging? Because like for me, I'm starting to draw perspective on, a relationship, recreation in nature, spending time in nature, food, connection to food. Where do you get your food from? What are some of those pieces for you that really forms that sense of belonging?
I mean, exactly what you've just said. The food I ate when I was a child, I still eat today as a grown-up.
And where does that food come from?
Well, back then it used to come from our garden. Now we buy it. Also recreationally, like my childhood memories are filled of, playing by the river, playing, when my grandmother was plowing the fields, we are there playing, but we are watching all of that happen. So it's my essence, so it's in the entire fiber, my memories, the food that I'm eating or ate. And now if that nostalgia that comes in, you like, especially with wild fruit, you're like, we don't find that fruit anymore because forests are being destroyed and all of that. So it's in everything, because I've never really been separated from my community except for when I went to school for a few years, but still came back. And even then, what sustained me was actually, the essence of where I belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting when you say it's in everything.
Yeah.
It shows that it's like within you.
It's
through the fibers, through your core.
Even now with how I raise my child, it's in that as well.
Yeah.
Because it's who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so important, and it's a piece that I'm really hoping to help support change around, because childhood forms youth perspective, as we're talking about, forms the future. And I think that relationship and these values of stewardship and connection to food and land, and thinking about the broader system is so important. What's one final question that I've been asking everybody is, what's one habit or practice that really roots you and connects you to nature?
Oh, wow. Well, I do like to touch soil every day.
Yeah.
Literally walk barefoot and just connect in that way. But I don't know if in South Africa, there's a concept, or in Africa, there's a concept that we call Ubuntu.
No. Can you explain that?
Ubuntu, it's an interconnectedness of us as a people. So it actually means I am because you are. So your well-being is directly tied to mine, right?
Powerful.
Yeah.
Holy.
So that's actually something that has anchored a lot of the work that we are doing, a lot of the ways we raise our families. It's in you. I don't know if you can learn it. Can you learn Ubuntu? I'm not sure if you can learn it, but I don't know. But you probably can learn it. Anything can be learned. Yeah. So, but that realization of that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And once you grasp that, you start being responsible in all your actions, because then it goes back to what we were saying about the water. What we do with it impacts people down there.
Yeah.
So what I do today with our natural resources impacts my child and his children after him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't separate yourself from the well-being of others. Yeah.
I think there's no better way to wrap up this conversation than that. That was incredibly powerful.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad you found it. Like, you must go read up on it.
Yes, I will.
It's an African philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a philosophy that would make the world a better
Yeah,
place.
no, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
It's
Ryan,
been
for listening to my diddle daddles.
Thank you.
All right.
If you enjoyed this video and want to see videos just like it, click here. And if you're curious on what it's like to reconnect with the natural world, follow along on the Regenerative Way and subscribe here.